Good evening, Linda, or I'm sorry, Evelyn, could you please give the invocation this evening?
Dear Heavenly Father, we bless your holy and matchless name during this city council meeting. Father, every part of this agenda we give to you to make known what is beneficial for the city of Freeport now and in the future. Let no one place anything before this council that you have not approved of for all the people of the city. Philippians 2:3 says, be free from pride-filled opinions, for they will only harm your cherished unity. Don't allow self-promotion to hide in your hearts, but in authentic humility, put others first and view others as more important than yourselves. Father, we lose wisdom and your governmental authority to every council member to hear what is needed. Let every member understand that you have the final say when you are invited to be a part of these meetings. And we close the door to every negative negotiation, every negative thought. We ask it all in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Evelyn. Now we'll officially call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller,
Here.
Alderpersons Clem,
Here.
Monroe is absent, Simmons,
Here.
Parker,
Here.
Stacy,
Here.
Shadle,
Here.
Sanders,
Here.
and Sellers.
Here.
And it has come to my attention that Alderman Sanders is passing his chair tonight to Alderman Stacy. So if you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Alderman Stacy.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go ahead, Alderman Stacy.
Okay, so next we have the approval for agenda, but before that happens, we want to make note of the dot under number 8 will be moving up to number 7. Do we have a motion for approval?
What?
Wait, just to clarify that you're moving the dot actually up to right after number 7, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just to clarify.
Do we have an approval for the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Do we need a vote? Do we need a vote?
No, all those in favor is fine.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay by the same?
I'm so sorry I missed the motion in the second.
Shado first, Sellers
Thank
second.
you.
Okay. Approval of minutes from the Committee of the Whole meeting held on November 12th, 2024.
So moved. Second.
We have motion by Shado, second by Parker. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? I'm sorry. Motion passes. Okay, we have 2 public comments. First being Joshua Atkinson.
Thank you, Chair, Mayor Miller, City Council. My name is Joshua Atkinson. I just keep this brief here. I wanted to talk about item number 8, the grant money going to 1010 South Adams. I've been talking to a number of people over the past couple weeks, and it seems like that the property owners on this one, they own total of 8 properties in Freeport. Some are houses, some are vacant lots, but they also listed on their application that they were landlords. So then the question got raised of whether or not they were part of the landlord registry. That's been taking up a lot of conversation over the past couple weeks here, and it has been said that they are not registered. So they've had these properties, they have not registered to be landlords in town, which opens it up to owing the city fine dollars if we were to be fining them. The excuse of not knowing they weren't landlords doesn't work because they listed on their application that that was their business, that's who they are. So, you know, that's just one more thing that kind of raises a red flag with this particular grant placement. Thank you.
Okay, and the second one we have is Rhonda Scott.
Good evening. I'd like to address the grant issue for 1010 Adams as well. We have received about $500,000 in grants, giving the city council an opportunity, a big opportunity to decide how the best use of this money could overcome the city's many challenges with blighted income, low-income neighborhoods. We have a problem with this one specific property because there's a question about whether this individual is actually low income. Now, it is a requirement that community development rehab grants go to help low-income, elderly, and disabled people correct unsafe and unsanitary conditions in blighted neighborhoods with their homes. But before income is even determined, there has to be a project or a purpose for those funds. So you don't just throw it out there with applications and let people apply and you don't have an intended project. The project would likely be, we're going to improve the corridor on Adams Street and we're going to fix up all the houses that are a major eyesore on there so that when you're driving into Freeport, you don't have the impression, gee, I wouldn't want to live here. So we need a purpose, and the Community Development Block Grant has been established since 1974 to eliminate conditions of blight and correct unsafe and unsanitary conditions to benefit the low to middle income community. The project for these funds is determined by the Freeport Community Development, the City Council, and public input. Adams Street is the current project. I mean, I don't know what you've identified as the current project, but that's what we're going for. And then there are the best practice guidelines put out by the HUD Grant Assistance Program so that when we get a grant, we can figure out how do you use the funds. They're suggesting that you prioritize the greatest needs to ensure community challenges are met. Then you have grant oversight and transparency to prevent fraud. Reducing administrative costs is to ensure that the money is used efficiently and makes the greatest improvement to benefit the low-income community. Somehow, a house in very good condition was offered an application which doesn't help the city achieve its goal. Apparently, no one took the time to identify which houses were contributing to blight and let the process be based on income alone, which is only one step in the process, and it is not the first step. My point here is that if we are ever going to expect to make improvements in this community, we have to prioritize the homes that actually need repairs.
Your time has expired.
And be
Thank you.
transparent and submit photos to City Council before asking us to approve funding. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we will have discussion regarding potential redevelopment agreement for 521 West Cottonwood Street, presented by Joel Fredenberg. Thank you.
Hey, Joel, you mind if I just give a little little introduction here? Yeah, appreciate that, Joel. The Region 1 Planning Council works with the City of Freeport on the Northern Illinois Land Bank. And so it's been a while since we've done a land bank property in Freeport. It's a really exciting program. And so instead of coming next week, with a resolution for an agreement, I really wanted to bring Joel from Region 1. He's an excellent partner for the city of Freeport, does a lot of good things with the city of Freeport. And the idea here is to give you an introduction to what the land bank does, how they work with the city of Freeport, and a couple of upcoming projects. So with that being said, thank you, Joel, for coming, and look forward to your presentation.
Yeah, like Wayne said, I'm just going to kind of give you a brief update. For some of you, it's probably been a little while since you've heard about the land bank or R1, and so we're just going to briefly touch on who we are and what we do, and then get to what's going on with the land bank in Freeport currently. So let's see. Here's the service area of R1 in the land bank. The areas in blue is the land bank jurisdiction, so you can see here Freeport and Stevenson County are within the jurisdiction, recently added in Lake County as well. Kind of gives you an overview of what R1 as Land Bank Authority does. The goal is to combat community deterioration by returning property to productive use, and getting, non-tax paying blighted properties back on the tax rolls. And a lot of times trying to save properties from demolition before, that becomes the necessary outcome. About us specifically as the land bank, we serve just under 1.5 million people. In the about 5 years that we've been around, we've done about 1.2 million in sales, 41 homes sold, and that generates about $150,000 in new tax revenue. Go through a couple of successful projects that we've had over the last few years in Belvedere and Rockford, and then kind of get to what's going on here with you guys right now. This was a blighted house in Belvedere. As soon as Belvedere joined the land bank, the older people had this on their list. They said, please, somebody needs to do something with this house. It's such an eyesore. And so it was the first thing we acquired in Belvedere, sold it for $41,000, and a couple years later, it was completely rehabbed and sold for $174,000.
Yeah.
This is a recent one in Rockford where, right by East High School, really good neighborhood, and, sometimes the owners just disappear. They die with no heirs. You never really know what happens, but you see those 2 years of delinquent taxes, and that's when you know it's time to move. And so we were able to acquire this one. It was in okay condition, but only a couple of people really could see a vision for it. And so sold by the land bank for $23,000. Eventually, after being rehabbed in under a year, sold for $140,000.
Oh, wow.
This is the kind of the most recent success that we had in Freeport. It's, probably over 3 years by now, Wayne, since this took place.
Yes.
857 East Shawnee was sold, I believe, in 2021 by the land bank for $15,750, and looks like it was recently listed again for rent at $875 a month. And you can see there in the pictures a little bit of the transformation that took place on the exterior, and that's the same shot of the stairs on the inside there below. And this is all achieved because we have these strong deed restrictions on these properties where, if you're going to be the buyer of a land bank property, that at this time it was a year. Typically we bring that down to 9 months. You have 9 months to get everything up to code, and it should be completely inhabitable within that time, or we're able to claw it back, essentially. So the buyers know what they're getting into, and they know they have to get moving and do a good job. So that brings me to the buyer that has come forward for this 521 West Cottonwood property. This is the reference point that we have for him. Is he purchased this one on 418 Tay Street in Rockford that, as you can see, was in very rough shape. Nobody wanted to touch this, and he saw a vision for it. And Wayne and I actually toured this, yesterday.
Yeah,
Was it yesterday? And this is what it looks like now. This is 7 months on, so he's still got another 2 months of his deed restriction, and he is just one final building inspection away from being good to go. I'm the one who put the abandonment sticker on this house, well over a year ago. I had to put it on the boarded up window to the side because it was so overgrown in the front. Again, I'm just an admin guy. I can't see the vision for these houses. It's crazy to me to see what some of these people can do with these houses. And so that brings me to, like I said, Leal Homes, Ivan, is the applicant for 521 West Cottonwood Street in Freeport. And so I'll kind of give you a brief overview of what the situation that we're doing here with this house is. City of Freeport was initially preparing for a demolition, but Wayne and my colleague Eric kind of took a look at the house and decided, I think there's something that can be saved here. We tested the market's interest in it by taking applications through our land bank sales portal that, like we saw earlier, we've successfully sold 41 properties through the land bank through that sales portal over the last couple of years. And one thing that we heard from the city was that you really wanted a tight restriction, and that's what we, already have as a default, is that 9-month deed restriction that gives you the clawback option that the land bank can come back and take that property if they're not doing it properly. We had an open house on 11/8, and Ivan from Leal Homes, who has done that 418 Tay Street rehab, showed up, drove all the way from Lake Zurich, and said he really wanted, he saw a vision for this property, wants to do it. And he submitted a bid for $8,000. And the plan is for Freeport to then quit claim this property to the land bank, and we will sell it to Ivan and Leal Homes. And then it will be the land bank's responsibility to continually follow up with them and make sure that progress is being made, and keep harping on about that 9-month deed restriction. We also just received a deed through a successful abandonment case to 52 North Bailey here in Freeport, and Wayne and I just went through this earlier. It was the first time I had seen it. I wasn't the one who stickered this one, and this is one that will, like I said, just got the deed. We'll do an inspection and see what it needs. It definitely needs a roof, and so we are going to put out an RFP to see if we can get somebody to do a roof and use grant funds of our own to do that. So that's kind of an update of where we're at with specifically 521 West Cottonwood, and kind of give you an overview of what the land bank does as a whole and what we're wanting to do in Freeport here. Yeah, any questions?
Cecilia?
Yes, I'm sorry, Joy.
No, that's all right. Just want to say I love it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Is there a limit on how many properties you can do in an area per year? Or, I mean, is it just finding the properties?
It's a matter of finding the properties. Evidence needs to be 2 years of delinquent taxes, pretty much. There's a more complicated route involving water bills, but it's typically 2 years of delinquent taxes has got to be the first thing. And then it does truly have to be abandoned. Usually if somebody comes forward and claims the property, the case pretty much dies there. It's when there truly are no heirs, no interest in the property.
Alderman Sanders?
Also, the people that are living in these types of homes, dilapidated, rundown, and everything of that nature, are they eligible for this particular program to rehab their homes and restabilize?
No, so the land bank specifically deals with abandoned.
Only abandoned
Yeah.
homes? And the purpose of that, why is that? Why abandoned homes or homes that are vacant? Why is that? That a home that a person lives in is just as shady and shoddy as an abandoned home. You know, why can't that home be eligible for rehab?
So specifically, our funding is through Strong Communities program, and we use that. You know, we are a land bank. What we can do as a land bank is acquire vacant, abandoned houses and use some of our money to rehab them and sell them again. By the state of Illinois statute, that's what a land bank can do.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Alderman Simmons?
So how are potential buyers made aware of these properties so that they can make bids? Like, how was this person from Lake Zurich made aware of this property?
Yeah, so he was initially made aware of the property in Tay Street, either through our mailing list or, you know, through word of mouth. You know, I'm not sure how he found out about it initially, but, you know, he did the property on Tay Street in Rockford, met us, formed a relationship with us, and, you know, when he was interested in this, we all thought, you know, this seems like a good partnership. You know, we've seen him do a good job. He was really the only one that expressed a strong interest in this property. But he was made aware initially through the Tay Street property, whether that was through our mailing list or word of mouth, and then made aware of the Cottonwood one by virtue of having done the previous property in Rockford.
Alderman Sellers?
Yes. So there's no website or anything that,
Yeah.
okay, so
we have
are they
website. This is
listed
all
on a
done-
website or anything, or no?
Yeah, so all the sales are done online through an online sales portal. You know, sometimes we have live auctions and, you know, it updates in real time. For this one specifically, the goal of the West Cottonwood property specifically was to make sure we could find the right buyer. Price wasn't really, you know, something that we were concerned about at all. It was more about getting that person who we know could take this property and fix it up and get it, you know, back in productive use.
Alderman Sanders?
Yeah, also, these fundings, the grant fundings for these rehabs, who receives those grants to disperse throughout the communities of these properties, and are they owned by the bank, or did the bank purchase these vacant properties and using grant funds to make rehabs to these properties?
Yeah, so the land bank has Strong Communities funds, and then when we acquire through abandonment process a property, we're able to use Strong Communities funds at our discretion to, you know, like I said, do an RFP to put a roof on Bailey, or, you know, we had a property on Church Street in Rockford recently that had a broken window. So we replaced the window before we put it on the market.
Yes, Director.
And Alderperson Sanders, thank you. And Alderperson Sanders, I want to state that when a property stops paying taxes, like he has 52 North Bailey up here, they stop paying taxes. They have 2 years of delinquent taxes. If a property does not pay taxes for 3 years, then the county trustee will petition for a tax deed in the 4th year. So essentially, if we don't use a land bank, a house will go 4 years abandoned. By utilizing the land bank, they use their own attorneys to petition to our courts to take ownership of it before it actually even goes to a tax deed. And then they took ownership through a court process, and that's through our partnership with them as collaborative government partners. They went through and paid for the funding to get ownership of this through the courts. And I can't remember how many actual appearances they had, but this process to get 52 Bailey was timely. It took quite a bit. And I meet with Region 1 at least once a month, if not weekly, and we go over properties that could potentially be land bank properties. And going back to the, you know, with Cottonwood, that's a property that the city owned that had actually been abandoned for 4 years, and that the city had purchased from the county trustee off of a tax deed. So in this situation, going back to Cottonwood, what the city is saying is, you know, we have it, we can demolish it. Would probably cost the city between $15,000 and $20,000, or we can. In all my meetings, I'm always going over my demolition list with the land bank, and if there's a property that they think could be salvaged, they said, hey, let's show it to some of our developers. Let's have an open house. Maybe we can find somebody. And that's kind of how this worked with 521 Cottonwood. And really the option is, do we move forward with moving into the land bank? We can potentially save it, utilize their resources, or do we demolish it and turn it into a vacant lot? I mean, it's really kind of our options with the property.
Right. And to your point, Wayne, a lot of times with the tax sale, properties end up in this death loop of claiming sale in error, and so nothing ever actually happens with them. Land bank, through abandonment, is able to kind of interrupt that process and get the public the property back, whereas, claiming sale in error just allows the tax buyer to continually accrue interest on it.
Can you tell me if you have contractors that give the land bank their services for little to nothing at cost?
Do we have contractors that give their services to the land
Yes.
bank? No. No, we put out RFPs or RFQs, and then people apply to, do work.
Like
such as-
bids?
Yeah, they do a proposal or a quote, yeah.
And also, I just actually spoke with, because on 52 North Bailey, we were discussing there's going to be a new roof, or they're looking to put a new roof on, and it's the state of Illinois. When he's talking about strong community funds, that's Illinois Housing Development Authority, state of Illinois. Anytime we're talking state of Illinois money, it has to be prevailing wage. No ifs,
Per
ands, or
diem wage?
yeah, it has to
diem.
be prevailing wage. So
Prevailing wage,
yes,
yeah.
so they can't work with a contractor for, you know what I mean? They have to pay prevailing wage for any services.
No, my point was, like, let's say for the average person to put in that wood floor would cost $30,000. I just didn't know if you had contractors that would say, for this type of house, we'll do it for 20.
No, so when it comes to using the strong communities funds, like Wayne is saying, we would have to, take a bid where someone was going to use prevailing wage. Once somebody buys the house from us, there is still usually a lot of work to be done. How they get there, as long as it passes, codes and inspections and stuff like that at the end, is up to them. And a lot of times, those are general contractors who are doing a lot of the work themselves.
Okay. Yes.
So the way they're making their money, Cecilia, is they're buying these properties cheap, and then they're investing. They're taking a risk on the property to be able to sell it for the $140,000. That's where they make their money.
Yes, Alderman Shado.
Director Duckman, are you looking for a motion to get this for a vote on the council?
I'm making the council aware that at the next council meeting, either December, the next one in December or January, I'm letting everyone know that there's going to be an agreement for 521 West Cottonwood, so we know what this is. And hopefully moving forward, I can bring more agreements that are similar. So if I say I have an agreement for this address in the city of Freeport with the Region 1 Land Bank, you are under, hopefully there'll be less questions because you understand the process, and I wanted you to be aware that this is coming soon.
Very, very good. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Alderman Sanders.
Yeah, is this in-house? All of this restoration that's taking place? So it could be restoration with components that are not directly in the city of Freeport.
Sure. So this person that's interested in 521 Cottonwood is from Lake Zurich, and they're going to get a permit with the city of Freeport. And if it's their property, they can, if they're a licensed contractor with my department, then yes, there's no requirement that says they have to hire a contractor in the city of Freeport.
Okay. I just wanted to see if, well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to see if there was a level playing field here where other contractors here in the city of Freeport can have the opportunity to bid on or to sign up or apply for these types of venture programs. I just wanted to see how we are administrating the whole thing, with everyone. That's all I'm asking.
Sure. No, just to be clear, we're utilizing their resources to put this back into the hands of a responsible contractor. And then there will be a proposal, a resolution to you stating what this contractor is going to do, what their deed restriction says. They'll have a timeline to fix the property, and that's their expertise, and that's what they would be doing. We are giving the property to the land bank so that they can send us a proposal for you to vote on at the next meeting.
Okay.
Alderman Simmons?
So what's the website and what are the requirements for one to be able to bid?
Yeah, so, did you say what is the website? Was that your first question? It's r1planning.org. So when you go to the homepage, right at the top, there's, a link to properties. There's no fee or anything like that to sign up. You just make an account on our website, sign up, and then you can apply. There's no sort of transaction ahead of time. It's just a cashier's check for the full amount when you close. We're not nickel and diming people in the process.
And you said r1planning.org?
Yeah, letter R, number 1.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next, we will have a presentation regarding CDBG HD grant by Tara Walters, Region 1 Planning Council Consultant for CDBG HR grant.
Hi, hello, thank you for having me. My name is Tara Walters. I work for MSA Professional Services. I am a community development administrator with my company, and I am the current grant administrator for the City of Freeport's CDBG Housing Rehabilitation Grant. So what I'm gonna do in this presentation is simply walk through the housing rehab program that's administered by DCO, which is the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity at the state level, as well as some of the national objectives of what the program is meant to do and how the state administers it. So first, this is a very overarching process of what the housing rehabilitation program is and how it goes. Essentially, a city or an applicant, a unit of local government within the state of Illinois can apply. The City of Freeport's application was submitted in 2021. Once those applications are reviewed, the state awards the most competitive grant applications. The City of Freeport's was awarded in 2022. The city then has 2 years to complete the project. So the original award, this project had a sunset date or a grant sunset date of November 30th, 2024. We did apply for a 6-month extension. So our new sunset date on these funds is May 31st of 2025. Once a grant is awarded, the city then has to go through an environmental review process. A tier 1 is the first step. Within the application, the city assigned a project area. And I don't have the project area from the application pulled in this presentation, but it was the area of South Adams, South Hyde, East Center, Wyandotte, and East Pleasant, kind of that general area. They decide upon this area based on the amount of low-income persons, the amount of blight, the place in the city that is a priority. And they also, once they decide on an area, part of the application is going out and surveying homeowners in this area for income as well as housing needs. So as part, your application was scored on, the amount of low-income persons in this area as well as the needs for housing rehabilitation. The environmental review at the tier 1 level is completed for that entire area. So at this point, we're not selecting individual houses. We're just kind of blanketing, oh, I'm so sorry. I talk with my hands. We're just kind of blanketing that entire project area. Once your tier 1 is approved by DCO, you can then start the individual rehabilitation application. So this is when you're accepting applications from individual homeowners within that project area. Once those are scored, we then have to do the environmental review tier 2 level, which is for each individual house that scored the highest. And so In terms of who was kind of taking over during this process at the application level, that was the City of Freeport. You guys compiled and submitted your own application. You were awarded. Environmental Tier 1, MSA got involved because we were working with Wayne a little bit on a different CDBG grant. So we assisted with that Tier 1 environmental review. The baton was passed to R1, who helped the city with the individual home application process and the scoring, and started the Tier 2. And then that was when the baton was passed back to myself and my colleagues at MSA to finish off the Tier 2. Once we get Tier 2 approval from DCEO, they say everything looks good, we can then bid the project and start construction on the individual rehabilitation. So some of the program objectives, this is an excerpt from the 2023 CDBG guidebook from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. CDBG funds are a federal pass-through, essentially. So they're granted by HUD. So in order for the state to administer these CDBG funds, they have to meet one of the 3 HUD national objectives. The 3 objectives are 1, benefiting low to moderate income persons, 2, aiding in the prevention or elimination of slums and blight, or 3, meeting other community development needs that pose a serious and immediate threat to the health and welfare of the community, also known as urgent need. The CDBG program, the CDBG Housing Rehabilitation Program specifically, as well as their other program called Public Infrastructure, is falling under the benefiting low to moderate income persons. Though the housing rehabilitation does help with the prevention and elimination of blight, the state's program is meeting the HUD objective of low to moderate income persons. Some of the other excerpts from the HUD national objectives: an LMI housing activity is carried out for the purpose of providing or improving permanent single-family owner-occupied residential structures that will be occupied by LMI households upon completion. And I'll skip down to the first bullet. For each assisted unit, the family size and income and ranges 30%, 50%, and 80%, which is, and the next slide will explain what that means. The level of income compared to the state's or the area's median household income of an occupant household and the amount of CDBG funds spent. And then second, data on racial, ethnic, and gender characteristics of persons who are applicants for participants in or beneficiaries of the CDBG activities. And lastly, the CDBG program under the state of Illinois, for a household to be eligible, this is again in the 2023 CDBG guidebook, the grantee must certify that the program recipients meet the HUD eligibility requirements, which is low to moderate income, and to do that they must submit their IRS form 1040. And when using this IRS 1040, we determine an applicant's annual income. They must use the most current version. So anytime that we're looking at a house at the application stage, before the construction stage, we're always getting these updated forms to ensure that they are still eligible under state and federal requirements. Further, that was more national objectives, so I'm switching over to the state program objectives. This was a presentation given each year. The DCEO has a CDBG administration workshop. I've just pulled these from the presentations that said workshop. So the eligibility requirements for housing rehab recipients are: they must be a single family residential unit, they must be owner occupied and prove that they live there, and they must have homeowners insurance. Secondly, the income must be verified, again, via the IRS tax form 1040, and they must be 18 or older. And this must be re-verified prior to any type of construction. DCO goes on to state that the prioritization of housing applicants must be given to very low income, elderly or handicapped households, and then 51% of the points in the in the entire project area must be given to these 2 criteria. I didn't have the income limits, but you can go to HUD. Anytime we're looking at where a person falls and whether they're low to moderate income, we go to the HUD income limits, which are updated annually, and they're updated per county. So whenever a house is next in line, I essentially talk to the homeowner. I ask for their IRS form. I also ask for supplementary documentation such as, their social security benefit, statement, things like that to verify against their taxes and make sure that their income falls below those income thresholds. The 30%, 50%, and 80% is a percentage of the median household income for the county. So anything under 80% is considered low, and then 50% very, moderately low, and then 30% is very low. Is there anything else you want to add, Wayne?
No, I appreciate it. I think that there's certainly maybe some questions now. I know definitely appreciate you chiming in, or I know Joel is also here. He did the scoring for Region 1. There were some particular questions, I think. I know Alderperson Stacy brought ahead about 1010 South Adams and their application. So I think any questions, just be available for any questions we have on the overall process. I just want to say I've worked on this grant now for the 3 years I've worked here, and I know that the city would not have been able to get this far and offer any funds if it wasn't for your hard work, if it wasn't for Joel's hard work with Region 1. It's, this grant provided the city, I think it's $64,000 in, consultant fees to help administer this grant with the extreme amount of documentation you have to provide. I'm sitting right here on, I think I measured this to be 6 inches of paperwork that this is the grant application, and it's immense, and it's really a juggernaut to take on. So there's going to be questions, and I would just appreciate you staying to answer any questions with the grant administration process.
Maybe have the lights on. Are there any questions? Alderman Sellers.
So you're saying that the 1010 South Adams did meet all the requirements to have done what they need be done?
Correct. To be eligible for the grant funds, they did meet all the requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Walters, do you consider yourself an expert on this type of grant?
I've gone to 7 years worth of DCO trainings. I can say I'm always surprised. Every single year things change, but I know exactly where all of the resources are. I'm talking with the state, not the state representatives, but members of DCEO on a daily basis, and ask them many, many questions anytime I'm stumped, and they always assist in every way they can.
How long have you been doing this?
7 years.
7 years.
Correct.
Alderman Parker?
Certainly happy you're taking the time, and you obviously know more about it than anybody in this room. So we appreciate it. Thank you very much. You've answered a lot of questions.
Thank you, Alderman Parker.
I have a question. Is there a rule that you have to stay in this renovated property for a certain length of time after the work is done?
There is not a rule per DCO and HUD requirements. However, in order to be eligible for the project, the idea behind having homeowner insurance, if we get wind that they're going to sell, DCO recommends that you contact them to, figure out a process. They do not like to see it. However, they cannot stop a homeowner from selling after the grant has completely commenced.
But there's no penalties.
No, yeah.
Can you tell me, I'm sorry, is there anyone else? Can you tell me, when was the first application given and what was the cutoff date?
Yeah, I'm not sure on that.
So what we're talking about here is, when I looked at the grant application, it's from 2021, and really what they discuss in the narrative of the grant was written by the former director here They talk about how they originally had 68 applications, and 60 of those applications were eligible. So they're actually called income surveys, and they're a one-page document with address, and they basically state their income. And it talks about the income limits that Ms. Walters has discussed. So at that time, it was 2021, and in the grant application, that was when those originally were submitted. Nobody here was working on that project at that time, so I'm not sure what deadline they gave. But what I do know is they state in the budget narrative, or they state in the narrative of the grant application that there were 60 people that were originally considered.
And do we still have those applications?
Yes, I'm looking at them right now. So it's in the text of the grant application, and it's also in the grant. I'm looking at the 60 right here that were attached.
Okay. I had asked for that information, and what I received was the 30 that came out, I believe, through Tier 2.
Sure. So I know I talked with Attorney Zito. I know you were at his office and had an opportunity to look at these originals. So if there's a communication gap there, I could certainly have these redacted and send you the original applications. We have them in our possession. But I will also say that from the 60 applicants, and Joel's here to answer any questions, when we went through that process that we saw where they were scoring, we kept a log. So to make sure that everyone was included and that we were transparent, I know you were provided the log that Joel did for all 60 of these people. And I talked with Joel today.
It's not.
Oh, did you not send her the log?
An email on Friday that had the log there and a whole
Of
bunch
all
of documentation.
68?
No, the application did not submit 8 because it states in the narrative that those 8 people did not qualify. So they originally, when they state in the narrative, was that there were 68 and they're only submitting 60, and they attached all 60 of them in this grant application. So they state very clearly 68 surveys were done, 60 were eligible, and of those surveys, they call them income surveys, they said, okay, 60 people are being considered. That's what they say in the grant application. And then Region 1 was retained to review those 60 applications. And in talking with them, I said, part of your services, you'll provide a detailed log so that it's transparent to know that everybody was contacted and given an opportunity to submit all required documentation. So Joel is here if there's any questions, but I spoke with Joel and he said at a minimum, he said, I think he believed people were called at least twice. Several people had additional follow-ups to the door. He said several people actually hung up on him, weren't interested, but it's all documented on the work that Region 1 did to ensure how we went from 60 people from 2021, then we went to 30 people that actually submitted all the required documentation, and then those 30 people were graded.
So out of the 61, only 30 gave you everything you needed.
Correct, and Joel can probably chime in if he'd like any questions on it. He did all the work with working with those 60 applicants. Do you want to step up and answer a few questions?
Yeah, I'm not sure how many people are actually on the call log, but everybody that's on there that made it, far enough to be requesting that additional information from, I called them all, like Wayne said, at least twice. And as he referenced, sometimes I was trying to explain we need, just this one more thing or something like that, and that was the end of the road for them because it was felt to them like it was too much, and I would get hung up on or something like that.
Okay, so why was there a second application hand-delivered to prior applicants to fill out again?
That's required. That's a requirement for us to move forward. We cannot move forward without that information.
So how do we know that all 61 that qualify even received that second.
Through our log, through our communication
Application.
log, through the communication log. That's why we keep a communication log, so that if somebody says, I didn't receive it, well, we called you on this date, called you on this date, sent a letter to your address. I believe we sent letters as well. So we sent you a letter on this date in our log, called you on this date, called you on this date. That's why you have a log. That's why professionals keep logs when they're doing work like this.
Information at your office. I asked for this. We talked about this and talked about this and talked about this.
Right. And so, all right, at my office, we didn't have this information yet. So this past Friday, I was like, so we got a response
But
from.
he said it's in that book that you had.
We have this book here. I'm sure I'm sure, as I've stated before, you and I have met several times. I have no problem getting you these original from 2021, these surveys, these income surveys. We can certainly provide those to you redacted with all the information that you would need. They're pretty simple. It's just, I guess the best way to look at these original 60 is it's a simple one-page document where they're told to state where their income falls between how much money they make, and then that's used in the application to move them on to the next step. So this is more of a preliminary, it's called a Community Development Block Grant Income Survey. So these are the 60 people this was all included in part of the original application. That moves them on to the next step, which was shown on that first slide when we go over the steps, what they have to do.
But it was more than just the income survey.
I don't know what you're asking for at this point.
The 68 applicants. You just said it was basically a income survey that they filled out.
That's what I have here, yes, and I believe Tara Walters can confirm that the state of Illinois does their block grant, community development block grant, as a LMI, low to moderate income. That's their factor. That's why they do these income surveys. That's how the grant's administered by the state of Illinois.
So that's what the Tier 1 application was, just that income survey?
So if I may, as part of the application, the income surveys are sent out to everyone within that project area. The more income surveys that you have to submit with your application, the higher you score. So that process is essentially used to get the grant. It doesn't promise any of those people that filled out that income survey. It's just proving to the state that we have a need in this area. It didn't ask for any income information. It asked them to self-certify on that application. Once you're awarded, you can then go back to those 68 folks, and they do another application. And that's when they're submitting their income information and certifying their application, and it's moving the steps forward.
So what's the first application? Similar to the second application?
I would have to pull it up.
Sure.
It's very similar.
It's very similar. I mean, like I said, we can, I'll make copies of these and send them to Clerk Anderson, and you can look at them if you'd like.
The second application asks for those prioritization bullet points, disabled, age, things of that sort. So that would help R1 score each application individually versus just income.
And I think what you're looking for, I mean, I would also, I don't know what you're going to find in here. I mean, we can look at it again. We're certainly willing to look at it, but this documentation here from 2021, that's what the state looked at to say, okay, we will give you $550,000. So they looked at these grant income surveys as part of the grant application and said, okay, City of Freeport, you now have $550,000, but in order for you to use it, you now have to follow up with these individual 60 property owners and get more detailed information. So these surveys really are here for the state of Illinois to say, okay, we'll give you the $550,000. You've proven through these stated incomes, which is what they are, people saying I make X amount of dollars. But then in order for them to actually be awarded, the individuals to get the actual funds, then they have to follow up. And that's what Joel did, was he contacted these 60 people and said, okay, now you have to show us proof of income. Show us your tax returns. Show us your pay stubs from, your Social Security statements. And half the people did not want to follow through with that. So that's what we're talking about here.
Okay, Director Duckman. I have tried for the last 5 weeks to see what you're telling me is right in front of you. And so I would like to see them. And I trust that we will be setting up a meeting so that we can go over the original 60 applications, which is what I have asked for from the beginning.
Okay, we did review that a few weeks ago, so we probably just have our communication wires crossed here, but I'm going to ask the question because I don't know what this will do for you. This grant's been awarded. So it's been awarded on those already. I'm just asking the question of, and we can go through another meeting and show it to you, but I don't know what my question would be is what are you hoping to gain by looking at those? Maybe you can ask a question of MSA on what that would affect.
I still don't understand how we went from 61 approved applicants to 30.
There's a log that all 60 people were contacted, and we
How
provided.
do we know that?
There's a log. There's an actual, every property owner says, on this date, I called this person and left a voicemail. On this date, I called the person, left a voicemail, sent a letter on this date, knocked on their door this date. He's right there. If you want to tell him he's being untruthful, please do so to his face.
I'm not saying he's being untruthful, so please don't put those words in my mouth.
Okay.
What I'm asking is, I remember when a second application had to be presented. And 3rd Ward Alderwoman, me, 5th Ward Alderwoman, and some of the community people wanted to help with this, offered to help with this, and was denied the opportunity to go door to door and give them this second application that we were being told they had to fill out. And so I am in nowhere calling you a liar. I am just saying, how do we know all 61 of those applicants received this second or tier 2?
So do you understand what the log did, right? So we hired them to have a communication dialogue with these 60 people. You understand that part, right? Do you understand that we hired Region 1 to contact these 60 people?
I know that's what you say you did.
And so they were directed to log all communications with 60 applicants. So if we take him for his professional word and he documented in a log that he did this, then I'm telling you the work was done per the log.
Okay, I want to see the log. I want to see the list of the 61. I just want to see it. Attorney Zito.
So the log was emailed to you on Friday because I got it on Thursday because remember I got the response. You and I had the phone call. I had to look at the response from the state there, and I was going to send you a summary. As a part of that summary that I sent you on Friday, it included the log of the MSA log of all the times they called people. So that should be in your email.
But it included the log of the 68 or the 31?
Let me just state really quickly, in this grant, my predecessor said they received 68, and essentially, 8 of them did not qualify of the 68. That's their words. That's their testimony in the grant application. So what they're saying is, they received 68. 8 of them came back, and they're saying they made too much money. So they got an income survey, and the person said, I made $100,000. And then they said, well, that doesn't count. So they submitted 60, but they're stating they received 68. So the other 8, that's not part of the grant application. I don't have those 8. It's not part of the grant application.
I'm not asking for the 8. I just asked for the 60.
Okay. Yeah.
Director.
Yeah. So just a side note, we do the CDBG grant process as well, but we do it on infrastructure, not housing. The 68 applications that were done just defined the target area of the grant. That's all that did is said, we got 68 applications from this street to this street. here's our target area now that where the money can be spent. That's tier 1, right? So that's the Adams corridor that was selected. That's all that did. The second tier is where you drive down into the homes to see who is truly qualified. The first survey is done on an honesty basis that you're going to tell me that this is your real income and you sign that. Sometimes when you go to the second tier, that's not the case, or people didn't file correctly and they won't produce the second piece of information, which automatically excludes them. So again, tier 1, the first 68 applications, just defined the Adams corridor that had the need for the 550,000. That's why we were awarded for that. The second tier drives down to each individual house on who is really qualified, which, if I'm hearing correctly, had nothing to do with this, is our 30 people, right? And so those are the final 30 that actually responded, gave us, if there was 5 pieces, all 5 pieces that were needed to qualify. That's where the basis comes in tier 2. So I just wanted to explain to that, the 68 applications, every corridor that's picked for community development block grants has to have, let's say you have 100 houses, you got to have 70% of them low to moderate income, or it doesn't qualify. The money can't be spent in that area. That's where the income requirements come from. If we tried to, I'm just picking an area for clarity, if we tried to move this grant out to Marvin Lane, none of those, it would never move forward because those incomes would never qualify. So if you had 100 houses, you got to have 70% of them that would qualify for this money to be able to be used anywhere in there. And then if I lived there and made too much money, then you wouldn't be able to use it at my house. So,
I understand that.
right.
So, Ms. Walters, did you go from neighborhood to neighborhood and look at all 31 of these houses? You personally?
No, I did not.
Who did?
The original grant application was done by my predecessor, and what I was told was that they went through the neighborhoods and handed these out. That's what I was told. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't. So that's the original 2021.
But I'm saying after the 30 was chosen,
Yes.
who went back to those 30 houses to see which ones were in the worst shape?
That doesn't matter. That was never considered. And I can have Ms. Walters explain that again. Do you understand that condition of house per the state of Illinois does not consider condition of house? So please, can we stop that misinformation? Does not matter to this grant. It's income.
I understand that. But when you have low income, whether you have 50 points, let's talk about the point system, but then someone with 40 points get chosen to receive these funds before someone with 50 points.
That would have, the point system would have prioritized income, disability, and age.
I understand that. So my question again is, why wouldn't the higher point, why would a 45 be done before 55? Or 35? Yes, Attorney Zito.
I think the question, I think what you're asking is that ultimately, once we got the 30 scored and everyone had points, right, then there's still additional hoops that have to be jumped through there as far as environmentals and this and adding, submitting additional documentation there. So I think ultimately we had enough money, roughly, let's just say, that we knew that we could do about 10 houses out of the 30 that we scored, that we could do about 10. There was enough money to do about 10. Amongst those 10, each 10 still had to submit more paperwork, more verification of this or that, more hoops to jump through. Sometimes a person with the lower score submitted all their paperwork in first, so they went ahead and said, okay, well, we'll process you. Even though you had a lower point, we knew you're in the top 10, so there's money for you. But because you submitted everything, we'll go ahead and process you first, because you submitted everything before the person that might have been like the number 1 scoring point. Number 1's still going to get theirs once they submit everything, because we know that we have enough money for 1 through 10. I think that's what you're asking about. Why did some people with lower points get their houses, their projects started first or sooner?
Yes.
Yes, and I think that's the answer.
That is the answer.
That is the answer, because one of the parts to this is once you move forward in this process, before they can go through and approve the construction, an independent state inspector has to go through the house and determine the scope of work, which Ms. Walters is in charge of as part of her grant administration, is going to these property owners and saying, okay, we need to schedule your inspection and then ultimately get your scope of work. So that's a process that also has to be done.
Okay, so how would you know if you lived in the house 10 years or more, you got 10 points. 5 years, you got 5 points. So let's say I've lived in my house 9 years, but I want those extra 5 points. So I say I've been there 10 years. How can you prove, or how do you know?
On their application, they are self-certifying that the information is true. That's what we have to go off of.
And I will also state that every bit of this process, and Joel's here to tell you about the grading process, but we also, and it's also been provided to you, our state grant manager has provided answers to these questions, but they're also available for you to contact. Mm-hmm. So, if there's any distrust, which seems like there's quite a bit here, on how our professionals did their work, our grant manager, who I spoke with, has said everything's been above board within the process, done correctly, and our grant manager is available for you to speak to as well. But I would say that there is a timeline on these funds, and would like to truly start moving forward with some more of these applications to get people the funding, or else it's just gonna sunset, and nobody's gonna get the money.
Alderman Simmons.
Can you, or Kurt, one of you, go back a couple slides when you listed, it had the 3 bullet points that determined the need for the grant.
I don't have power.
I think it was the one can you go back one, or forward one? No, it was one that mentioned Blythe, income.
Back one. So,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, okay, so the purpose of this grant, yes, moderate to low income is first, but aiding in the prevention and elimination of slums and blight. That does have something to do with conditions of homes. And if we go in a home that has no blight and put in a hot water heater or a furnace or whatever, that does nothing to reduce the blight in that neighborhood. And I think that is what Alderperson Stacy is getting at when she's being told the condition of the home doesn't matter. Yes, it does. That's one of the purposes of this grant. So if we go into people's houses and do inside stuff first before these houses that are contributing a great amount of blight to Adams Corridor, that defeats the purpose. And I believe that is the point that she's trying to make when she's being told that the conditions of the house doesn't matter, and please don't add misinformation. It's right there in writing. That is part of this grant.
This slide is stating the 3 national objectives, but any state program must meet just one of these. And the one that's highlighted is the one that CDBG Housing Rehabilitation is meeting by the administration of the grant.
So I do want to add here too, this is national objective. And you did a really good job saying how this is what's called a pass-through. Federal government money passes through to the state. So what Ms. Walters is saying, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, this is what the federal government says. If you are going to administer this grant as a state, you have to pick one, you have to fall into one of these. And our state says we're going to do low to moderate income persons. The state of Illinois is saying that is how we are going to administer these funds. So when I say it doesn't matter, it's because the state says we are involved in this factor. This is what the state's saying. This slide is federal government. The state of Illinois falls under LMI, low to moderate income, not these other two. And that's why our state says in the applications, we need to verify income. That's why, and if you go to another slide, that's actually state level, it states that here's the objectives from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity who administers this grant. That's why I'm saying it doesn't matter. We need to stop this misinformation. Our consultants are working with standards provided by the state, we're not working directly with HUD.
Correct. If I may add to that, for example, if we go back a slide, the state of Iowa uses the second bullet as their national objective for one of their programs, which is treating slum and blight in the downtown. So the state gets to decide which objective they would like to base their program around, as long as it meets one of them.
I have a question then. So, but we as a city, we have that discretion as well, correct?
Correct.
And it would benefit us more so to hit two birds with that one stone, where we meet low income and reduction of blight, versus just helping people with low income who really, their home is not a blight, like they don't need any outside work, but that's what we're trying to do. That's our goal. I would hope that's our goal in administration of this grant, is to help reduce and help that area that we just had a whole new street put in, which is an entranceway into the city, and making that look better. I don't understand why that isn't the goal, just because it's not necessarily the specific requirement of the state, however it is mentioned. So it's not like we'd be doing something against what's written, so I'm confused.
There's one thing I do also want to reiterate here. Any work done on these houses is an independent state inspector who determines the scope of work. So when we're talking about it should have the front look like this, it should have a new water heater, the state inspector determines that. They come in, we schedule an inspection, and the state inspector comes in and they determine what work is done. So it's wrong to think like, well, I drove by and this house looks bad. Well, a state inspector has to come in and determine it. And if the state inspector creates a scope of work, if it's not done by a state inspector, the work isn't approved. It isn't. It won't happen.
So are you saying a state inspector drove by all 31 of these homes?
Nope, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying once these homes are selected, the scope of work that's approved comes from a state inspector. That's what I'm saying. And the state of Illinois, that I've spoken with repeatedly, and when we talked about the scoring with Region 1, we had several meetings. They said you have to focus on the need of the applicant and not the condition of the home. That was what was stated repeatedly. And I invite you to please call our grant manager from the state, and they could reiterate what they told me and what they told Joel, was that when we're scoring these applicants, you have to focus on the applicant, not the condition of the home. So we're following the guidelines of the state. There is no other agenda than that.
And if I may add, the repairs are prioritized by code violations, lead remediation, or other public health hazards within or outside the home, as well as energy efficiency and accessibility. Prioritized, not required. They can do other repairs as well.
Yes,
I do believe that they've all answered all of our questions and they followed the state guidelines, not our city guidelines. So I'd like to move this on to the next item.
I think Mayor Miller had her hand up.
Yes.
I think we need to get back to what the council's responsibilities are here. So the council is responsible to approve or not approve when something comes before you. Your responsibility is when Wayne comes to you and says, I want to apply for this CBDG grant, you can say no, you don't like the grant, you don't like the guidelines. That's your responsibility. Your responsibility is not in walking out every single detail of what our director does or these two that have been administering something. The day-to-day is not that responsibility. If we did that on every single item that we have to approve, we'd never get anything done. You have to remember, you are the legislative body. You are not the day-to-day body. So you either trust those that are put into these professional spots or you don't. If they're not doing their job, then we should fire them. But obviously, they're doing their job.
when this was brought to us. And I'm learning because it should have came with pictures and it didn't. Information has been withheld purposely. We come here and as directors, as head of the city, we trust that you're bringing us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And in reality, that's just don't happen. So I am here on behalf of the people. And I will inform my constituents in every way possible when we have been misled on something, but took a vote. Yeah, you told me the other week, you voted for this. And I did. But not having correct information in front of me. We get what you all want us to have. And that don't always totally involve the truth. So if you want to move on, thank you for your time. Thank you, Joel. If you have a business card, I would love to have one. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to number 8. Kurt, this is when I need you. CDBG, Adam Avenue Housing Rehabilitation Application Discrepancies. This presentation aims to make the public aware of the discrepancies that the city of Freeport has allowed to occur within the CDBG Adams Avenue Housing Rehabilitation Program. Such discrepancies should have disqualified the applicants, but the city has decided to provide grant funding to them anyway. $48,000. This is a total disregard for the individuals living in the affected area who really need and deserve assistance. Welcome to 1010 South Adams. This is a list of all of their property that they own. They are landlords. They write their own 1040s. That's their business. Totaling $290,500. But they're low income. Next slide, please. This house that we're calling 1010, once upon a time was 1012. And the little house in the back of the big house, if you would, was 1010. But now you can clearly see that the big house is no longer 1012, but it resides as 1010. Why switch the addresses? if we're not doing something unfair here. Next slide, please. 1010, 1010. And 1013 or 20, that address did not read 1010. It read 1012. Moving on. The incomplete application. The housing rehabilitation specific document was created by the Illinois Department of Commerce. The corresponding document, the application, has the City of Freeport seal on it. It shows that the application was incomplete. Why did the city accept an incomplete application? Who authorized this uncompleted application? Next slide, please. We saw this with Ms. Walters. Next slide, please. What you see highlighted was their scoring. Of 1010/1012 South Adams. Next slide, please. This is the application. As you can see, the application home must be paid off based on the fact that the existing debt on the property was left blank. Did anyone from the city bother to ask if there was any equity in the house that could be used for any repairs? Next slide, please. Remember that the city placed this on when the applicants next supply any income. They never supply any income information. The application even asks for rental income based on the application's 2021 tax returns. Both the applicants and spouse occupants are listed as rental properties. This applicant owns six rental properties, and I am hard-pressed to believe they receive zero income for any of them. Next. This is the final page of the application. What I would like to call page, the applicants are to date and sign to verify that all the information provided in this application was true and complete to the best of their knowledge. As you can see, the applicants who did not date nor sign this document were still approved. How? $48,000. Brand new hot water heater. Brand new furnace. Brand new central air unit. Wrapped windows. And it goes on and on and on. Deck fixed. This final page. How? How do you approve? How do you say someone qualifies and approve them for $48,000 when they didn't even sign or complete the application? I rest my case. Next page, please. Citizen of Freeport, I want to provide you with information on how the Adams Street Rehabilitation Program is handled. You and I know what I presented tonight will not make a difference. The city is still going to give grant funding to this applicant. It does not matter that the application was incomplete, that critical information was withheld from it, that the applicant has a healthy real estate portfolio, or that misleading information was provided. These things may not matter to our city manager. They may not matter to our mayor. They may not matter to our director or even some council members, but they matter to me. Citizens, please understand the significance and gravity of this situation. Those grant funds that the city has agreed to provide for the rehabilitation of this application home are still your tax dollars. The use to get these funds speak volume about the integrity of the applicants, but even louder about the integrity of the ones who approved them. Thank you. And next we have discussion. I'm sorry, Attorney Zito.
And I just want to just make a quick brief point here, or comment here, though. So, Alderman Stacey, just so you know, there, and I don't know, maybe if you haven't seen my email from Friday, there was, I did, as a part of that email that I sent to you that had the log in it, Wayne was able to find a copy of the signed application, so I did email that to you so that you have that. Or
That
you should have it in
application
your
was
inbox.
signed.
Attorney Zito, Director Duckman, I came in here November 26th, and I asked for a copy of the 68 original applicants. What I got was the 31, not the 68. I know what I asked for because I knew what I was looking for. And I got the point system. And what I was given the application I was handed was not signed. I'm not making this up. This is what you gave me November 26th before I came to your office November 27th, and I voiced my concern to you about this.
Correct.
It was not filled out properly. It's not even signed.
Right. And so I did pose that question about the signed application to Wayne, and I believe he then reached out to Joel, and I think on Thursday, Friday morning is when Joel was able to go and he found through his records the signed application, so that's why I provided it to you on Friday in my email.
Or did we go get a signature?
Oh, I know we didn't get a signature because I provided him a screenshot that showed when the file was scanned and copied. So I know it's not a, we didn't go out and get a signature. That grant applicant signed, put their signature to it. And I also want to reiterate that assets are different than income. It's a very simple economics 101, accounting 101. And the state of Illinois requires income verification. I've asked the state of Illinois. They said, we do not consider assets. I've asked the state. They said, under no circumstances, they put in their documentation that they require an IRS tax return. They do not require assets. So I want to be very clear that the state is not requiring us to go check everyone's bank account, real estate portfolios, 401ks, et cetera. It's not part of it. So again, that's misinformation. There is a difference between income and assets. And we were provided 3 years of tax returns for this applicant.
If I was a landlord, I too could make my own 1040s. Is there anything else? I'm moving on, thank you.
If I could, please.
Yes,
You can make your own 1040, but the IRS is nobody to play with.
it's not.
If I was a landlord and I documented on a 1040, there's a separate form for each piece of property. You have to document everything that's in your portfolio is listed as income, plus and minus, on a form on your 1040. So it was reported if there was any income that was part of their income, the asset of the building itself is irrelevant.
Alderman Shado, all their properties were not even listed on their income tax. Moving on to number 9, discussion regarding social media policy. Director Bridge.
Good evening, Council. I aim to keep this brief. Since 2017, the city has managed social media pages for city postings, information, and more. A social media policy for all staff has been in place to set guidelines for personal use, but has yet to set guidelines for page administrators. In addition, public comment on city pages has been limited since 2017. In order to improve transparency and strengthen the communication pipeline between the city and residents, a revised policy has been created to aid page administrators in allowing comments and fostering a more dynamic environment for social discourse. As the city's statement of purpose reads, the city of Freeport believes that the use of social media platforms can effectively broaden the reach of government communication to its constituents. The use of social media by the city is to convey or obtain information that is useful to or will further the goals of this local government. The revised policy also outlines important guidelines for page administrators to ensure discourse remains informational and appropriate. Obviously, there would be no financial repercussions to enforcing this policy, adopting it, and staff recommends that when the time comes, obviously not tonight, that we move forward with the policy. So let me introduce you to some important notes in the policy, regardless of if you have it in front of you or not. It's a pretty simple one. It has, I believe, 8 headings on it, but there are about 3 that are actually important to look at. I'll start with section 3, which is titled Comment Policy. So we all know that comments can most of the time be good for public discourse, but sometimes they fall under some not so great things for a city government page to have under their posts. And so they list 9 things here, of which are, just to name a few, promotes discrimination. We're getting rid of those comments. Threatening any person or organization, we get rid of those comments. So on and so forth. That's just one section. I'll move on to another section, which is section 5, administrator usage. I want to point out that, again, the city already has a social media policy for employees in general that applies to their personal use of social media. However, we don't have anything yet for the page administrators, aka myself and the administrator of the police and the fire and the library. These city employees are responsible for the posting of information, commenting, and communicating with constituents, and moderation of activity on all social media. Again, no one else other than the administrators, no one else is allowed to moderate these activities. I'll move on to section 6, which I believe is the last one I want to point out, but may be one of the more important ones. And it's titled Community Messaging Guidelines. It talks about the types of community events that we're allowed to share, types of community events that we're not allowed to share. City social media sites will not share community messages that include political, public issue, or prohibited product information. And there's much more, but I believe that is the gist. And we're here tonight, obviously, to discuss the issue. Personally, from a communication standpoint, I believe it improves the transparency, improves communication between city government and its constituents, and I believe it's a good thing.
Any questions?
Thank you.
So I will just end by saying this. We have discussed at the city that if there's no, how do I say this? Fight against it, we will be moving it to first reading. So I'll say that later. We'll be moving it to first reading. So, thank you. Oh, Aaron, go ahead.
Yes, Attorney Zito.
I was just going to ask, Ryan, so are you looking for a motion then to have this by the council, because we're at Cow, if you want it specifically move forward for first reading?
Yeah.
Is that what you're looking for?
That would be great.
So move.
Second.
Take a vote.
I missed the second.
Shado?
I did.
Oh, I had it backwards too.
Shado was second. That's all right, it don't matter.
So do we take a vote? Individually?
Voice should be
Don't,
fine.
shouldn't need one.
It's not first reading, it's a vote to move it.
Right, this is just a vote to move it forward to the next regular city council meeting for first reading, so voice vote is fine typically.
All in favor of moving this to the next council meeting for first reading, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Thank you.
Motion passes. Number 10. Discussion regarding revised hangar lease and hangar rental rates, presented by City Manager Boyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff has reviewed all of the hangar leases, the lease amounts, and has put forth for review the new lease format, as well as a suggestion to make a change to ordinance 2021-05, increasing hangar J's rent from $575 to $800. Just a few high points. The new lease agreement was put together. We've been working on this for a number of months. We've gone back and forth with Angie, the fixed base operator, and she is. We've kind of worked out some details, and everything is looking really good with that. As well as she has compiled the competitive or comparative leases at local or other airports in our region of a similar size. One of the outcomes was that we are looking pretty comparable to all of the other airports. We used Sterling, Dixon, and Rochelle as our comparisons, all of a similar size and traffic. So with that, staff would like to bring this to the next council meeting for approval of the ordinance change. That would be, let's see here.
It'd be a new ordinance,
Yep.
actually.
Oh,
We'd
new,
have to
I'm
redo
sorry.
a new one.
Yep, we'll bring an ordinance to the next meeting with the changes to J Hangar.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Discussion regarding ordinance authorizing Northern Illinois Gas Company, DBA Nicor Company, to construct, operate, and maintain a gas distributing system in and through the city of Freeport. Francis Agreement View LOA?
I missed putting Manager Boyer on there, I'm sorry.
Apologize.
Okay. City Manager Boyer?
Thank you, Chairperson. So each year, or I'm sorry, every 50 years, the city enters into a franchise agreement with our utilities. Various utilities require different durations, but in Nicor's case, that's our gas company, it's a 50-year agreement. So this hasn't been looked at for 50 years. In the past, the city included all as some of the requirements. The city required gas service for all city installations, which was included in the new version. However, staff pressed back on Nicor to include the library due to the fact that the library is part of the city and also is one of our largest gas users due to the HVAC system that is required to keep the air dry for preservation of the books. So city staff has finished this negotiation with Attorney Zito, and we are ready to move this forward to first reading at the next council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to move this forward at the December 3rd meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me? Attorney Zito?
I just want to clarify the moving it forward to which council meeting. It'd be the December 16th.
December 16th. I'm sorry, I just said the third month, yeah. December 16th. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Wait,
Go ahead.
question?
Nope, just comment. So, city manager is being a little, I guess, coy here. I just wanted to mention that this negotiation that he was able to strike with Nicor is a $20,000 savings to the city annually in gas for the library.
All right.
Thank you. Oppose? Okay. Discussion regarding investigation into the political fraudulent financial forensic audit.
Potential,
Alderman Monroe and Sanders.
Due to the resource and the information that is not going to be presented today, Alderman Monroe and myself, we had not been able to collaborate to determine what it is the presentation will present today. And what I like to do is suspend this and carry it over to the next meeting, and hopefully we have all of the contents of everything that we need to bring forward to the next meeting. So
Thank you.
we want to suspend that for now.
Discussion regarding, oh, I'm sorry, public comments. Do we have any public comments?
Nope.
Yes,
Jody Miller. So the IB grocery stores not coming to Freeport? Dwayne Dickerman.
Yes.
IB stores not coming?
No IV, Tommy, I'm sorry.
What Angela gonna do now? Put something in there?
She's gonna continue to be our fearless leader.
Hello. I just want to make comments about
name?
this block grant.
please, your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am Lucinda, Cindy, however you want to see me. But, okay, just regarding the block grant that has been discussed the last couple of months or so. I applied for this grant. I can remember this grant probably started back in 2019, per se. I remember doing an inspection on my home with Ben, then with Amy Bechtel, that's no longer here. And then in probably 2021, I probably did an application again with Lorena. And so from time to time, I would ask Lorena about this, the status of the block grant and all of that. So she would say, the state is this and the state is that, it takes long. And I understand that, but, and when this grant came out, I remember getting the letter, so it was probably one of the first one that applied for this grant, okay? And so, in regards to this 1010 South Adams, of all of these things that they have, agreed to putting in furnace, what have you. So when Ben came to my house, it was things that needed to be done, and it's still things that need to be done, okay? I've been in my home almost 17 years, and, well, has been 17 years. And I've worked for this city, will be 24 years come February. And I'm not, like Alderman Stacy said, you're gonna do what you wanna do, but as far as it's being just based on income, I don't think that's legit, but it is what it is. And so I do need a $20,000 roof on my house, but the city does not pay me enough to provide that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I have to make a rebuttal about the presentation you saw tonight. Alderman Simmons, you are absolutely 100% correct. As long as we meet the state requirement, and it is a requirement, as I stated, that the applicants have to be low income. But you can add, as a community, this grant gives you the flexibility for you to set the priorities of what the greatest community needs are and how we're going to ensure that the challenges are met. We are not going to meet challenges by going in with perfectly good homes and buying them new air conditioners, especially a landlord. This is absolutely absurd and not what the grant intended. So you were right, and this needs to be changed. We are a home rule city, I think. I don't know if we dropped that. But as long as we meet the state requirement, you as a city, you can decide that the project area will address blighted homes in that area, and you can also decide that it will be safe and unsafe and unsanitary conditions. You can even decide that you do not want them to fix air conditioners. You can decide this. That this grant gives you the flexibility for communities to decide their own needs. That's all I have to say.
Yes.
Good evening again, Josh Atkinson. I just want to say that I think we need to step back and take a lesson from this. I honestly don't think anybody was doing anything wrong necessarily. Mistakes may have happened, but at the end of the day, it's the council that made that mistake. We didn't set forth those parameters when it came to council however long ago, back in 2019, 2018, 2019. That these conversations should have happened then. We have the opportunity to get $550,000. How do we use this to better our community? That conversation didn't happen. So the surveys went out, we got $550,000, and then Director Duckman had to figure out how to use it. And with all faith, I believe he did the right thing and tried to figure out how to use it, and they put forth. Now we're seeing that, oh man, we wish we should have done this, we wish we would have done this, and we failed. We failed. You know, we need to take that lesson moving forward. Yeah, there was the gentleman Joel presented. You know, the first thing that came, the only thing I saw about that great program, the land planning, is there was one slide that he presented that it said that it could be a rental property. You know, one was bought for $15,000 and turned around and it was renting out for $875. First question that comes to mind is, can we as a community, when that comes forward next week or whenever that's going to come back, can we put a stipulation in there that says it can't be rented out, it has to be sold or lived in? You know, those are the things that we need to look at when council, when city staff brings this stuff to council. to look at that stuff, read the stuff, discuss it, and figure out how do we use all these tools, all this grant money that Freeport's been getting to better the whole community as a whole. All right, thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I make do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Sellers and, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.